All right, so I'm supposedly recording this, and looks like we're starting with you, Liz, on Cyberbunker.
Okay, well, I thought this was pretty interesting. I remember these guys from a while ago. For a long time, I thought maybe that this place didn't really exist. I thought maybe it was just like urban hacker lore. But when the Pirate Bay got busted about 10 years ago, it turned out it really was real because this place was hosting the Pirate Bay. So apparently they've been hosting other quasi-legal, questionably legal things. It's interesting because I was looking at their old what you're showing there on the screen now is a nifty placeholder that the German cops put up when they seized domains.
Yeah.
Which I thought was pretty cool and kind of funny that they had like a Matrix background on it. But I went to their old website and I thought it was interesting. Their policy was basically, if you do something illegal, it's between you and the authorities. Well, apparently the German police didn't really agree and showed up with 600 cops and raided the place. Because basically they were running out of there. They were running like Silk Road, the sequel, and other, and not just drug markets, but also like hacking wares and stuff like that. So kind of interesting.
Why would you need 600 cops?
Well,
isn't it just two geeks in there?
That's what I wondered, but no, I was looking at diagrams of this place. It's an old NATO bunker. And I can kind of see why they wouldn't really know what they were getting into. It's huge, just floors of servers. And apparently I was reading in another article, the Krebs on security write-up on this is also really good. I was reading that they found like piles of cash and all kinds of stuff, like cash and weapons in a server room. So who knows?
Okay. Well, I was just amazed when I talked to the Department of Justice guy, and he said the reason why the Silk Road guy got life was for the drugs, not the hacking and not the murders, but the drugs, which I'd forgotten about. So anyway.
Which is kind of screwed up when you think about it.
Well, in California, I forgot drugs are illegal. Anyway. But anyway, I guess so much for bulletproof hosting.
So they were running I thought it was kind of funny, one of the illegal servers they were running out of there was called Cannabis Road, like Silk Road, but so apparently the authorities didn't take too kindly to that.
That especially doesn't seem very illegal anymore, but anyway.
Well, I think one of the big problems was they had, there were a bunch of, there was one that was primarily like crypto crime tools and wares to target banking and financial payment processing institutions. I think that was a major problem. The other one wasn't just the cannabis one. They had a whole site that was dedicated just to hard drugs and research chemicals. So
yeah.
They said it was the second largest in the world, which would, I guess they didn't say what the first largest was. I guess that would have been Silk Road, but.
I think I've seen research maybe 8 years ago of cases where they actually took down major bulletproof hosting and it lowered all the spam in the world by like 20% for a year. So, they really, there was an article and books I saw years ago that said all the spam in the world comes from like 10 people. And if you could just arrest them, it would really help.
Yeah.
It's actually a very effective way to deal with internet crime.
I don't know if you guys remember the Spam House deal, but this was, they were running, I think they were housing the Spam House servers.
Yeah. Only that also worked for phone calls.
Oh, all the spam phone calls with a few people?
Yeah.
Boy, I wouldn't mind getting rid of that. Makes my phone essentially unusable. All right. Well, looks like you got a Mage Card one. I remember seeing this one.
Yeah, Mage Card. IBM X-Force kind of realized, oh, look, Mage Card looks like they can use captive portals to take info from routers now.
Wow.
Because, layer 7 routers are starting to show up everywhere, and to get in them, you need a captive portal, and Mage Card kind of that's their strength, to add their JavaScript libraries into web pages and get info. So they're putting the word out there that, hey, although they haven't necessarily seen it, they do see how Mage Card can use their attack scenarios on these layer 7 routers on their captive portals and get information.
Have you got one of these layer 7 routers? I've not seen one.
I don't have one, but I do understand how Mage Card works, and I see it, I get it.
Well, can you tell me a little more about it? Because I don't think I get it.
So what they do is they stick their malicious code into JavaScript libraries as a third party or fourth party, so that when you load a site, it adds their stuff into it, and it just all runs on the client side.
But how could it do that if you're using HTTPS?
Well, because on the site, it's, on the content where it's going to get JavaScript stuff from, where it pulls the JavaScript libraries. Normally, those are off the server that it's coming from.
But I think everything works for HTTPS these days.
Yeah, but if your website says pull in these JavaScript library files, and those are not hosted on your site, they're coming from somewhere else, like let's say W3 schools, then they could have a line where Mage Card adds their stuff, so that when you go through HTTPS, it pulls that stuff along with the malicious.
Well, I'd like to understand how that works. It seems to me like HTTPS should prevent all of that. You can't get it from the wrong server, and it's coming through encrypted with a key that the other people don't have.
Right, so the server that you trust, that's the one that they hit.
Oh, they infect the server and alter the files.
Right.
I thought they were putting this malware in the router.
Well, they're saying that exact same thing can be done on the router, on these layer 7 routers that have captive portals, because they also do the same thing.
Because then the router is the source of the captive portal. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
The captive portal on these routers does the exact same thing as other sites. Let me pull in these files from other servers that I trust, and Mage Card just says, oh, since you trust those, let me inject it on that, so that when it arrives to the router, it looks like it's coming from the trusted source, and it is, with extra code.
Okay. Now, can you hear Irvin, Liz? Because it sounds to me like he's underwater.
I can hear him.
It sounds okay?
It was breaking up for a second, but I can hear him okay.
Okay. Well, we'll keep going then. Good. Hopefully the recording's all right. Okay. Thank you. Well, that's helpful. So they put malware on. Okay. So when you first connect at the captive portal, then they put malicious JavaScript on your machine. Yeah, that makes sense.
Right, because the captive portal is pulling from these trusted sources, and it's that space where Mage Card is hitting.
Okay.
So it's doing it. They're hitting from the place that's out of your control.
All right. Well, I sort of get it. I'm excessively dumb from jet lag, so it's probably just me. Anyway, let's take a look. This one I thought was pretty amazing, and it's a good tweet storm of 3. This guy did 1 research paper, and other people did 2 more. I didn't realize this. These smart TVs are totally reporting everything you do, just like websites, and it's much worse than I ever imagined. The Amazon and Fire TV has got all these double-click trackers, and one of them, they're sending your MAC address, unique IDs, everything off and unencrypted up to the web, and one of them has a privacy mode, Roku, and if you turn that on, it has more trackers. It just turns on more trackers, and he found that 3 different groups have done this. They've made things to automatically watch a bunch of channels and automatically see how much they're being tracked, and apparently they're all being tracked just to an insane extent. So this is straight out of, I think, Brave New World, right? Where the TV watches you and reports on you to the central government like it is in China now.
I read an article that was saying earlier this year, I read an article saying that that's why TVs are so cheap now, because they're making money off of the data. So it's in their best interest to sell them at, basically they're subsidized televisions.
Well, you know, I'm out the moral high ground because I quit watching TV long ago. Yes, sir. I just use the internet all the time.
It's funny because the TV manufacturers actually have a term for this. They call it post-purchase monetization, where they're making money off your data tracking.
Well, they always were making money with ads on the TV.
Sure.
It probably has the same legal basis, but people certainly don't know about it, and they sort of know about the other ads. Anyway, I thought it was pretty amazing work.
Keep those dumb TVs around.
What's that?
It's that time to keep those dumb TVs around, or maybe just go and get the old CRT TVs.
Yeah.
Well, yes, I suppose that's true. The old dumb TVs would be a solution.
I mean, I would imagine that a lot of the like smart home stuff is doing this, which is partly why the manufacturers are in such a scramble to try and eviscerate this data privacy law that they're trying to pass in California. I mean, it would make sense to me that like if you have a smart fridge, they're going to transmit as much data as they can sell based on your consumption habits.
Yeah, it makes sense. Well, you got something about airplanes here, which I thought.
Yeah, so I thought this was interesting. Sorry, it's behind a soft paywall here, but I thought this was interesting because, you know, I noticed at DEF CON this year, I didn't get to go over there, but the Air Force had a presence. They sent people and set up a booth with a simulator. And one of the most interesting things about this article to me was buried down at the bottom. So, I mean, it makes total sense to me that they would focus in on this as a problem, since, you know, it's pretty obvious that those systems are real vulnerable. Now, what I thought was interesting here, buried down at the bottom, it talks about how starting in like, I think it was 2016, they started, the government bought an old, like a 30-year-old jet, and they started doing pen tests on the jet, but then it stalled out. And the way that it was worded was kind of cryptic. It was Boeing, like, it sounded like Boeing did not like what they found, what the testers found, and it's kind of stalled out based on that.
Yeah.
So it's pretty interesting. It's like they're headed in the right direction, and then the initiative sort of dead in the water because the plane manufacturer doesn't like their phones being exposed. I mean, it's absolutely the wrong way to go about it, but I think it's also super common in this type of situation.
Well, I think there's both a military angle and there's also a huge, public outcry.
Yeah.
Like they don't want people to be afraid to get on the plane, so they'll have strong incentive to sort of cover up the flaws and try to pretend nothing's wrong.
Right. Which, you know, people like us are going to be more afraid to get on the plane if we know that it's completely untested. And
hell no, I'd be more excited to get on the plane and check out the flaws. Like I went to Sri Lanka and I was in my hotel, and the second day they said, you know, a couple months ago this hotel was bombed with suicide bombers, and they just repaired it. And I said, oh, well, if I'd known that, I probably would have been even more interested in staying here.
Well,
what could go wrong?
Yeah.
Well, they had all the security measures all over the place. They were interesting.
Did they seem to be effective?
No, it was just like China. It was all complete garbage. You walk through a metal detector, they just shrug, and it goes off, they ignore it. But the first day I went walking around, and they had a Roman Catholic church and an armed guard with an AK-47 in front of it. And I said, well, that's unusual. And they bombed that church and my hotel on Easter. So it was the first terrorism in like 10 years. And so there was security everywhere, metal detectors all over the place, and guys with AK-47s just all over the place.
Wow.
And all these peaceful tourists, anyway.
Well, I think it's interesting. One of the interesting things about this, though, is I think it's interesting that the federal government can buy a plane, start a pen test, which, I mean, the red tape involved in that has got to be monumental to begin with.
Yeah.
They get it off the ground and they get it going. And now they've been stalled out for the past couple of years just because the corporation had some managed to shut it down. Now, I know they have a lot of contracts with the government, but I think that's interesting. It kind of demonstrates to me that private enterprise might have a lot more power over the government than we might like to think.
Well, Boeing is not all that private. They're so integrated with the military. But I think we were talking about this last night with Alex as a guest lecturer, and he's saying this is very common with pen tests. You get approval for a pen test, and then when you find something, you say, wait a minute, we didn't think we were going to find anything. What is this garbage? Now we hate you. It's understandable. I mean, the whole idea of red team is sort of insane. Why would you pay someone to ruin your life by making trouble?
But that's what we like.
I mean, I think the general idea is that you pay someone to find the trouble so that your life doesn't get ruined. But it's definitely counterintuitive to. I think it's definitely counterintuitive to most of corporate America's mentality on that. And I think that the military is starting to realize, like, oh no, we have some problems here that we really need to address, and that's a step in the right direction. But it's one of those things where you think, well, they've got this power and they hold these, they hold power over Boeing or whatever company with these contracts, but it's not always the case. So, I think it's going to take some time to really improve our security posture across the board because of stuff like that.
Yeah, and you need improvements on both sides. The pen testers need to communicate more professionally with management and say, we're not just troublemakers. We're actually on your side and want to help your business succeed, which, hasn't been the case in the past. So.
Right. And you hope that they can make those changes before it's too late.
Yeah, that's right. You gotta present it the right way. And I think I'm seeing this happen. It was I saw it in a keynote at, I think, B-Sides SF, and it was a Black Hat. The security people are finally realizing we're just part of the business. And you aren't this special, sacred, perfect arbiter of goodness and niceness. You're just another part of the business. And you have to cooperate with the rest of the business so you can actually make your product and make money, and you can get off your high horse. You're not that different than sales or development or marketing or all the other stuff. You're just another part of the business.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's see. That was airplanes. Now we got this WeWork thing. Oh boy, I'm going to give you trouble about this one. Go ahead.
So according to this article, WeWork basically had open Wi-Fi for everybody, and people freaked out after the fact when they were all breached. And in this article, they're going, why wasn't things like VPNs installed or doing VLANs for the different companies that are under WeWork? Why wasn't the basic stuff in place? And my first reaction to it was, well, why didn't the small businesses themselves do that? Mm-hmm. Because basic security. I mean, if you're locking your own door behind you, then why aren't you locking your digital life, especially your business?
I mean, giving people, this is what every coffee house does. They give you unencrypted Wi-Fi, and you use it at your own risk. So why is that their fault?
Right. It's just like, you go to the coffee shop and you have a private conversation with somebody. Well, you're in a public place.
Yeah.
Anybody can eavesdrop.
Yeah.
It just comes back to lack of education on that front, and I think too, like, I've been following the WeWork story a little bit in the press lately, just because it's really, the empire really seems to be, if not crumbling, suffering some serious issues. And it was funny because as their company was growing, it seemed to me like one of those runaway valuation type situations where they were valued really high and just scaling kind of out of control. Because I mean, they start off with like 2 or 3 locations, and next thing you know, they're everywhere. It's actually kind of fascinating to read about the some of the goings on with the executives in this company. So.
Yeah, apparently they did something wrong and they canceled their IPO, and they're pretty much just giving up now.
Wow. I didn't know they canceled.
I heard a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I don't know exactly what the problem was, but apparently they totally fouled up.
Huh.
I know that.
I mean, like so many companies here, I think they were pretty irresponsible with their VC money and just kept getting more and more. But that's not an uncommon story around here. So
Not at all. All right. And then I've got, well, this one here I thought was pretty awesome. And I heard even more about this on a podcast. China really has this social rating system. And now they got a camera that can take pictures of a whole crowd and identify every face. And so obviously it's awesome because now you can find out all the rioters in Hong Kong, and you can scan like a stadium or a crowded street and pick out the people with a low social rating and arrest them or something. And of course they want that here. They've been trying to do that for about a decade, put cameras in the airport that can sit in the ceiling and detect all the people on do not fly list walking through. So there's a huge desire for this everywhere. But of course it's also sort of terrifying and surveillance state stuff. But in China, they got no compunctions about that. And
am I completely crazy here? Or, I mean, the first thing that springs to mind for me is the fact that this type of technology gets cheaper and cheaper, and it's not just going to be available to governments, but what a destructive tool this could be in the wrong hands. I mean, or in the right, quote unquote, right hands of the government, obviously, but I mean, it's not just Orwellian, but it could be pretty a pretty good way to target certain people that that you have nefarious intent towards.
You know, that reminds me of an old movie, Sphere, with Dustin Hoffman. He said, "It is really bad in the wrong hands," and he said, "We are the wrong hands."
Yeah.
My first thought is, man, that camera, they're probably not putting any security measures on it because they want to roll it out as quickly as possible. It probably doesn't even have a password to it, so whoever is smart enough to find it online is going to shut it down or just even be more nefarious than its original intent.
Well, you hippies just don't understand the value of law and order. Now everyone is properly controlled by the state. Like in China, they have these things, they pick up jaywalkers, and if you jaywalk, it lowers your social score. And when you take the bus, they give you a 20% discount unless you have been jaywalking and have a low social score, in which case you have to pay the full fare. And people will obey when properly incentivized.
Should we make a betting pool on how long it takes for the first one of these to end up on Shodan?
Right?
That's a good idea. I didn't think of that. That would be fun too. Of course, it'd be so much data to download.
I wonder, well, it depends on what kind of compression they use for it. I wonder too, you know, how hard would it be to fake these things out? You know, if you get plastic surgery, you fool the camera. How hard would it be to fool these things with prosthetics? Or, you know, it seems like it'd be I don't know, maybe my mind just thinks in devious ways, but it seems like it also, you know, when we start talking about deep fakes, you know, how hard would it be to go out with posing as someone else?
Well, apparently it's very easy. I've seen these tests. They gave us those shirts at DEF CON China to fool these things. All you have to do is put a couple funny colored squares on your hat and it will totally think you're somebody else. Because this has got AI in the camera.
Well, no, those don't make it think that it's not that you're somebody else. They disrupt the image collection software so that the camera can't like see you. But you know,
they can make you think you're someone else. I saw a picture where it had like grids of dots, and they make you think you're a celebrity and stuff.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, because it's looking for strange features of your face, and you can reverse engineer it and fool the AI.
Wow, that's cool.
So you could like all wear T-shirts and you'll all be identified as like the president or something. That would be awesome.
Well, Halloween is here, so it's time to go hit up Party City and start getting costumes and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, they're having a big party in Hong Kong trying to fool the Chinese surveillance, so we'll see how that works. Well, all right, and I guess we're up to K-12. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so no huge surprises here, but you know, ed tech software, not very secure. This came sort of on the heels of a discussion that I've been having with some of my colleagues that started off, well, one colleague said, well, you know, how can my students have concerns about privacy? How can I put their concerns to rest? And it's like, well, you just want to shut them up. Maybe you should see if some of those concerns are valid, because some of those concerns are pretty valid, it turns out. And some of these are extra concerning to me because it applies to minors. You know, it's bad enough with college students, in my opinion, but one of the things that really stood out to me about this article was that a third of the companies, and that's down from last year, which last year was almost 40%, but a third of the companies use kids' both identifiable and unidentifiable data for third-party marketing. And that is really disturbing to me, because especially at that age, these kids don't have the option to opt out. They're in public school. They don't have the choice to say, well, I'm not going to sign on for this. You know, it makes me wonder how user agreements work for minors. Because, I mean, I don't think they can necessarily legally sign away the rights to their data. I don't know if they have their parents sign anything, but that's pretty concerning.
Yep, you know, I actually, as usual, was on the fascist side of this at the college. We had our own email server, and it kept going down. And I said, let's just put everybody on Gmail. And they said, then Google will compromise the student's privacy. And I said, oh, who cares about that? I just want the email to work. And that's what we did.
Well, I mean, I think I think that there is probably a happy medium. I think that you can still use third-party services, but be kind of judicious about it. And one of the issues that we have is the people who are making the decisions of what software to use typically don't understand this privacy stuff. And you know, I've been in some of these companies. I can tell you that the sales department is the biggest department in most of them. It's not engineering. Yeah. It's not compliance, it's sales. And they're very good at that.
Well, you know, this reminds me of like food additives. I think probably the most useful law would be the law that makes them tell you what they're doing with your data.
Yeah. And make sure that I think it's important to that the parents and the teachers know. Yeah. So they can make better informed decisions on this stuff. I mean, I think it's kind of gross how like there's a certain very big service that's used. I'm not going to name names. They're local. They're used in colleges and in K through 12. And one of the things that's really messed up about this is that it's compulsory for students who go to those schools. They have no way to opt out of using this service. And it takes all of the students, it takes intellectual property belonging to the students and to the schools and makes it, and they use it to train their AI, essentially. And no one has the ability to opt out of this. Their work is used to enrich this company, who charges exorbitant subscription costs. Anyway,
why can't you name the company? I'm into white hatting. I do this all the time. In fact, this was a big controversy in Sri Lanka. The Celebrate people said they can't believe I do this stuff. Tell companies about their problems. I'm running a huge legal risk, but my lawyer says I'm not. Not in America. You have free speech.
Well, it's the company I'm referring to is Turnitin. They're
We talked about them.
Yeah, they're a plagiarism checker. We referred to them last week a little bit, yeah. But you know, nobody's really talked about what they do with their data, who they sell it to, and you know, this isn't even discussing what the third-party companies do with that info, because that stuff gets resold all the time. We don't know how securely that data is stored. My guess is probably not very.
If at all.
Well, yeah. I imagine you're right, but I must say, if I write a term paper for class and somebody finds out I did it, I don't really see how that hurts me.
I think it's more of an for me, it's more of an ethical concern. These companies are are charging exorbitant amounts of money to the schools, and then using the work from the students to enrich their product. Students don't have a choice whether or not they want to opt out and make this data property of that company. And I have a problem with that.
Yeah.
Right, because once it gets into their system, it's theirs now.
Right.
Yeah, but if all they got is a bunch of term papers, who cares?
Other than no more original ideas, because the thing has all of them.
Well, there's usually nothing original in term papers. That's the whole problem.
That actually is a major problem, because a lot of instructors don't understand how this tool works and they use it, and they will ding students on their grades based on the seemingly arbitrary quote unquote similarity score that's returned. And I mean, that's
good sales then.
Well,
yeah.
I've got the fascist response again, which is obviously what they need to do is sell more data to get more money to improve their product so it's more accurate.
I mean, I don't know about like why. I guess the answer to me is like, make it harder for your students to cheat. Make it less desirable for your students to cheat.
Or what about don't use term papers at all?
Well, see, that's what I've been doing. But the problem is I realized I'm really supposed to be, and now I'm seeing how much they suffer over even 5-minute presentations and term papers. I can see I really should have been doing it. I'm going to do it. They're terrified at writing a few sentences. They're terrified at speaking in public. And that means they really need to do it.
These are true, but I think you can assign these things without using a service like this that's expensive. It doesn't work very well and kind of unethical.
Yeah, well, I'm going to be dealing with this issue this semester, trying to deal with the plagiarism, and I'm not sure what I'm going to do, but I'll let you know.
I mean,
maybe you can build your own AI to do the same thing.
Well, I do have my top secret technique, which is you put a paragraph from the thing and you put quotes around it and you put it in Google, and that'll tell you to copy the whole paragraph. I bet this is enough right there. Yeah.
Also, I mean, you can usually get a pretty good idea just based on talking to the student about it. Have them do a presentation on their paper and then ask them questions about it. It's going to be pretty apparent right away whether they have actually assimilated the material or not.
So when they present, are you going to let them have the paper with them, or are they just going to stand up there and talk and you hold the paper?
I have them do the presentation separate from the paper and earlier, so they're not closely connected the way I'm doing it right now, but maybe I'll change that. This is the first semester I've actually done the term papers, and I'm convinced I must overcome these difficulties and continue doing it, but I'm sure I'll be sort of guessing how to handle it for a few semesters.
Yeah, I think they're really important for them to do. I'm assigning more writing to my students just because they really clearly need it badly. And, I haven't really had much pushback from them, but it's definitely to the point where I want to develop a whole dedicated technical writing course because of it.
Oh, yeah.
Because they need it. So
and there's already a course sheet.
That is definitely necessary.
There's already a course sheet at 11, professional communication. It could be used for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, good. Anyway, it's interesting stuff. Let's see, where are we? I'm losing my thread.
Yeah, we did the K through 12, so mine is the HR.
DHS?
Yeah, the one under it.
This one here? Okay.
Yeah.
Good. I'm glad because I somehow lost. Oh, there it is. Okay, I'm finally. Yeah, this one here. It's a good title, but there seems to be actually no content.
Yeah. So this is the whole bill. I think the meat of it is in section 1.
Yeah.
In general, the center maintains cyber hunt and incident response teams for the purpose of leading federal asset response. The stuff that they have to submit is further down.
Yes, so
in the report.
Yeah.
And so basically like a SWAT team for incident response.
Yeah.
And the stuff that they're submitting is the total number of incident response requests received, the number of tickets opened, statement of the staffing, and any collaborations.
So it sounds
They
like
want to build
sort of exploratory, like they don't even really know what they're doing yet.
right. So they kind of want to have a team to see, like, can this at a federal level work?
Well, this is a good sign with no money allocated.
Yeah.
Right.
Complete nonsense.
No money.
They don't know what they're doing, and there's no funds. I don't feel good about this. I don't know. The idea sounds good, but this implementation looks really half-hearted.
It's one of those, like, you're doing something instead of nothing, but at the same time, like, put some funds behind this. Have us show up and tell you, like, how to do this so it's not half-hearted or half-baked.
Yeah, I guess so. Well,
it does seem like a step in the right direction, though, and kind of like we were talking about earlier, I think this stuff takes forever to happen. So, I mean, at least the wheels are turning, even if very slowly.
I guess maybe something good will come out of it. All right, and I've got the last one here I just thought might be a step forward. They're going to actually fine companies for selling private data in Nevada.
Wow.
And the California privacy law is comparable to this, California Consumer Privacy Act. So this may begin to do something about all this ridiculous exploitation of everybody's data. They're going to have a fine if you don't let people opt out of selling your data. So you wouldn't be allowed to do what you were saying, force everybody to hand over their data without even telling them, without giving them a chance to opt out. So that might be a good thing.
It says $5,000 per violation. I wonder if each user would count as a violation.
Oh, I think so, but I don't really know.
Hopefully, because then it'll be scary for them.
And I've also heard that they are trying to prevent all this and just have a federal law which will supersede it and be much weaker. But I think that's not, we'll see. I think that's probably not going to happen now because, thankfully, because of the impeachment inquiry, the government is paralyzed again. And my dad, who was even more cynical than me, if that's possible, always said the best thing to do is have the government paralyzed because all they do is screw everything up anyway. So we've achieved that now. So I don't think they'll be passing any federal laws to override this.
I did read in another story that the first round of GDPR fines is being levied on companies in Europe. So
yeah.
I mean, I feel like it's still not enough money to really hurt a massive corporation like Google or something. It was somewhere in the area of $200 million, something like that.
I think GDP can go up to like 2% of your annual revenue or 5% of your annual revenue. I think it's rated by that.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I didn't realize that makes sense. Actually, I didn't realize that it was pegged to revenue.
I think so, but yeah, we'll see. It's anyway. It'd be nice to see some of these privacy laws come in. They may do something because it does seem like right now it's just open season to do anything you want with your data. Even the DMV is selling your data. And there really ought to be at least disclosure and some kind of limiting of this.
Yeah. I guess British Airways was the, you're right. It is 1.5% of revenue for their tax. So that's interesting. Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess that's it. Any other remarks? All right. Well, I'll stop it and publish it. See you folks next week.
Great. See you next week.
Okay. I'll share in the meeting.